Hello people, welcome to my channel. My name's Mark David. I'm a cartoonist and I'm here to teach you how to draw cartoons. In this video, I'm going to be a little bit different to my other cartoon channel videos. I'm going to be talking about the things that, 8 things that people often get wrong about cartooning. So 8 misconceptions about cartooning. And we'll start with the first thing. The first thing that people get horribly wrong about cartooning is this one. Now, people say cartooning is easy. Well, I blame partly myself for that misconception. I believe drawing cartoons is actually quite easy. If you watch this channel, hint, hint, subscribe to this channel, hint, hint, and have a go at the tips which I show, then you will be able to draw. But then what do you draw for a cartoon? You can't just draw a dog and then say, okay, here's my political cartoon for tomorrow. It's got to be about the issues. You've got to know how to express a cartoon properly. You've got to know how to spell the words properly, get your grammar and punctuation and apostrophes correct. You've got to know all this stuff. And being able to draw is a different thing to knowing what to draw. And that's where it's not necessarily that easy. It normally takes me at least a couple of hours to do a cartoon, and a lot of cartoonists will spend a lot longer than that. If some cartoonists do these beautiful, elaborate illustrations, and good on them. I mean, their work really shows the value in that. And it's not easy to do that every day, even if it's easy to learn how to draw cartoons, because they still have to come up with the ideas, and coming up with the ideas sometimes it's not that easy. And if you've got a deadline in 10 minutes before you've got to come up with your idea, it can be quite stressful too. So as people say, it's not easy. The people say it's easy. People who say it's easy, I would say in general, are just the ones who don't want to pay the person, because they're trying to come up with an excuse for not paying the cartoonist. They say, I'm not going to pay you for that. It's just easy. I'm not going to pay you for that. Well, my approach is to just not work for that kind of person. So that's the first thing that people get wrong about cartooning. The number 2 big thing that people get wrong about cartooning, and this is not in any particular order, they're just another thing that people get wrong about cartooning, is that it only takes a few minutes. That's very similar to the first one. People say, oh, why should I pay you all this money for a cartoon? It only took you a few minutes. Well, no, it doesn't take a few minutes. My work is considered pretty my line work is considered pretty loose and relaxed and fast, I suppose. And it still takes me hours to draw a cartoon, often because I have to redraw it a few times. I've got to draw it in rough form and then draw it again, and I still don't like the drawing, so I'll draw it a 3rd time. Some of my drawings I'll draw 4, maybe 5 times until I get it right. I might have a really tricky perspective that's driving me bananas, or I might have a caricature which might take a lot of work to get working. So it doesn't take a few minutes. It normally takes maybe a couple or maybe a few hours. And that's why you have to charge according. That's why the cartoonists won't charge for a few minutes work. They'll charge for a few hours work. Not ripping off the customer. They're just charging for the time that they put into it, the time and the energy and the effort that they put into it. That's number 2 thing that a lot of people get wrong about cartooning. Number 3 thing that people get wrong about cartooning is that people get, oh, you're told what your opinion is. Well, the good news is that I've never known a cartoonist to be told by their editor, you must support a certain political party, or you must say this, or you must do that. In my experience, and look, I don't know what everyone else's experience is, I do know a lot of professional cartoonists, and I've never known any of them to tell me that an editor told them, okay, I want you to support such and such a side in politics and to attack the other side. I've never heard anyone being told to do that. Much to the editor's credit, even some newspapers and editors who might be considered rather right-wing leaning in their personal views will still allow a cartoonist to publish work which might be critical of their preferred party, in the interest of not trying to tell the cartoonist what to do. And you've got to applaud that. Top marks to those editors for doing that, for allowing the cartoonist to express the cartoonist's view. It is the cartoonist's view. The cartoonist put the name to it, and the editor the editors that I've always known have allowed cartoonists to do that. Even if they don't agree with the cartoon's opinion, they don't tell you what to draw. So that's kind of a nice thing. That's number 3. Number 4, thing that people get wrong about cartooning, suffering, yeah. Okay, I was told by a potential client, he rang me up and he wanted me to do a cartoon, and right at the start of the conversation, I wanted to establish an agreed on fee for doing the job. So it'd be worth his while and worth my while to put in the effort. He said, I'm not going to pay you. He said, you're a cartoonist, you're an artist. He said, you've got to suffer. And he honestly said that. He said, artists do better work if they suffer. So I don't pay you, you'll suffer more and you'll be a better artist because of it, and you can thank me for it. I said, so my approach was, well, if that's the case, I'm not going to work for you, and if that makes you suffer, Mr. Client, then you can thank me for that later. And he was he was not amused by my opinion. He probably was expecting me to back down and say, oh, okay, I'll work for nothing and I'll suffer and I'll grumble. Well, no, I refused to take that line. I think he was a bit surprised. I don't think he was trying to be, I don't think he's trying to be all that bad. He's just trying to be a bit cheeky, seeing what he'd get away with, and it didn't work. And I just refused to work for him. I said, no, I don't work for that kind of, those terms. If I put in the work, this is how I work. If you might be able to find someone who work free. Good luck getting a good cartoonist to work for free, because the good cartoonists are going to have to charge for their time and effort and for their ideas. And all this stuff about suffering is rubbish. If cartoonists were never paid for their work, that wouldn't produce more cartoonists. That would produce fewer cartoons, because all those guys and girls would have to get another job to pay their bills. And that is going to mean that they won't have time to draw cartoons. It's not going to help the world of art if they suffer that way, does it? It just means that you get fewer cartoonists. So that's one thing. I haven't heard that a lot, but I have heard it, and it did kind of bother me. So I mentioned here something which people get wrong about cartooning. What are we up to? Number 5. The 5th thing people get wrong about cartooning, crediting the source. Okay, now a lot of people think it's not theft if you take someone's work and you credit the artist. Just be very, very careful about that, because yeah, it's good to credit the artist, and a lot of people who pay for the work credit the artist too, but just crediting the artist alone is not a form of payment. It's just considered maybe better manners than not crediting the artist. You see, when I started cartooning back in the 1980s, and I was having to observe certain laws of copyright, and the industry had to follow certain laws of copyright, and the industry has changed enormously. We've got this new technology which makes it very easy to take someone's work, but the laws haven't changed all that much. In fact, they've changed very, very little. So just be careful with that one. If you steal, for example, if you imagine someone stole a car, do you reckon this argument would work with a policeman? Oh, it can't be stolen because I'm giving full credit. The cop's still going to arrest you for stealing a car. It doesn't matter if you own up to where you stole the car from. It's still theft in the eyes of the law. I know that's going to make me very unpopular to say that kind of thing, because a lot of people get really annoyed with this thing called copyright. Well, a lot of drivers get really annoyed by speeding fines too, but they should still be careful when they get out on the road, because if they do speed, they could get caught and they will have to probably pay a speeding fine. They might even lose their license. And that's not because they like the law or don't like the law. It's just the way the law works. And copyright laws haven't changed very much. So be very careful about that one. If you give credit to work that you took, you're not really buying yourself any legal protection. If anything, you're just admitting to the world where you got the work from. And if it ever goes to court, it's really not going to help you very much. What's even worse, actually, and this happened to me, people have, remember a fella, he stole my work and he rubbed my signature out of the bottom of the cartoon and put his own signature underneath it, pretending that he'd drawn it. And that's really quite bad. That's called I've forgotten what the term is. I think it's called copyright management tampering, where you pretend that the copyright belongs to someone that it doesn't really own it. And that's quite bad. And that's quite wicked too, actually, because you can get the original artist into trouble if the cartoon is used in the wrong way. I'm very careful about how my cartoons are used, and all cartoonists are. So just be careful about that. Just be careful that, what I'm trying to say is that, look, the technology makes this stuff easy, but that doesn't mean that you're protected by the law. Just because the technology makes it easy, the technology is just making it easy for you to break the law, just like the technology is making cars easy to break the speed limits because they go so much faster now. So the technology is making it easy to break the law, not making it easy to avoid the law. Very different things. So just be wary of that one. So what are you up to? Number 6 thing that people get wrong about cartooning: publicly visible versus public domain. I hear this a lot. People say, oh, the stuff is on the internet, so I was able to use it without paying the artist. No, once again, that's one of those things we've got to be very careful. Remember, I was saying that the technology has changed a lot, making it easy to go to a website and download all the pictures and use them on your own website. Doesn't mean that it's legal to do that. The technology is making it easy, but the laws really have not changed as much. The laws, as often heard it said, that the laws are not keeping up with the changes in technology. Same old laws. So just be careful with that one. I'm not going to tell you what your ethics should be. That's not my job. But what I will tell you is where you should be very careful. And people believe that. They think, oh, I saw something on Facebook or on YouTube or on Twitter or something like that. It was on the internet. Therefore, because it's on the internet, anyone's allowed to use it. No, just be careful. In the eyes of the law, you most likely aren't. There's some kinds of specific rules. Sometimes websites will have a set of rules. There might be the Creative Commons, I think it's called, which is gives a set of guidelines on how images can be used. Some people say things can be used as long as they're not used for commercial reasons. It's up to the copyright owner. When you produce a bit of artwork, you become the owner of the copyright, and that copyright is a property which can be transferred, it can be sold, but it belongs originally to the creator of the artwork. And just because you see it on the internet doesn't mean that you're suddenly the creator, you're just the person who saw it. So be really careful with that. I don't want you to get into trouble just because the technology made it easy to do so. Just like I don't want you to get a speeding fine just because the technology makes your car so much faster these days. Just be careful that technology can get you into trouble if you don't know what the laws are, or if you believe these commonly believed misconceptions. That's number 6. Number 7, exposure. Gee, we're dealing with a few copyright issues today. People think that if they take someone's work, they think, oh, I paid for it with exposure. As a photographer, people sometimes think, oh, I've heard wedding photographers saying, people getting married saying, oh, I don't want to pay the photographer, but I'll give them exposure. I'll put on my Facebook page and say that you took the photos. So is that going to pay the photographer at all? No, it doesn't. And what kind of exposure is the photographer getting, or the artist if it's a cartoon? They're just getting exposure as being exposed to someone who works free of charge. No one wants to get paid in that kind of non-payment. No one wants to be known as someone who doesn't charge for their work. We want to be known as professionals, not people who just give our stuff away to everyone. Because once you give your work away to one person, it's really hard to charge the next person comes along if they know that the last person didn't have to pay for it. So exposure does not pay for work. I had to pay an electricity bill recently. It was quite a high bill, and it's fun. I'm wearing jackets and things in the house to keep warm rather than use the heater. And I couldn't pay for my electricity bill with exposure. I used to joke that people in the Himalayas die of exposure. Exposure is not something you want to get paid in, and it's just be aware of that. Offering exposure is not really going to help the person who produced the original work. And a lot of people think it does. People think, oh, I gave them lots of exposure. No. In some cases, I know some influencers who steal people's work all the time, and they get these huge followings, and you look at what happens to the creator from whom the influencers took the work, and the influence might get the work out to 100,000 people. And then watch the statistics for the original creator of that cartoon, and the original creator will probably find that their stats don't improve at all, because most people don't bother going through to the original creator and subscribing to or following them on Twitter or whatever, or X as it's now called. They don't do that. What they do is they just follow the influencer. So the exposure is not giving them any benefit to the creator. So that's another thing. People think exposure helps the artist. It actually doesn't. Exposure is only really good if the person has already been paid, and then exposure can be good. But if the person hasn't been paid, it can be the wrong kind of exposure. So just be aware that the laws might not be the way you think they should be, but that's just the way they are, and be really careful about that. I'd hate to think that you could get into trouble with the law, end up in court on a copyright issue, thinking, oh, but I gave credit, I gave exposure. Now this person is saying I infringed copyright by stealing their work. Well, yeah, be very careful. That's how the law works. Remember, the law hasn't changed, technology has. And finally, the eighth thing that people get wrong. I hear this one all the time. They say, oh, you're a cartoonist. Wow, you must have all this influence over politics. I don't believe I influence politics. If I did influence politics, if I could do a cartoon to change elections, well, Australia's political history would be very different over the last 10 years, at the very least, because the politics have not always gone the way that I would have preferred. So therefore, I don't think my cartoons really change things. I've never had someone come up to me and say, oh, by golly, Mark, I saw that cartoon you did and I changed the way I'm going to vote at the next election. No one's ever said that to me. More likely, if I did a cartoon which criticised the party that someone was going to vote for, rather than someone saying, oh, wow, I'd never thought of it that way, I'm going to change how I vote. More likely they're just going to say, no, Mark, that's a bad cartoon, it's not funny. People, if they see a cartoon that doesn't match their political views, they're more likely just not like the work than to change their opinion. So influential, I don't really believe the cartoonists influence. I think what cartoonists do is hopefully make people think, maybe give people a bit of a laugh, ideally, maybe both. Change how someone's going to vote. No, I've never had someone change their political views because of a cartoon that I've done. So I don't pretend to be influencing politics. And in fact, a lot of politicians love being mocked in cartoons because at least it makes them visible. And I've heard it said that politicians prefer to be in cartoons rather than not, because it means at least they're getting their name out there as exposure. There's exposure again, so it's getting them well known. So that if it generally changed people's views about the person, they wouldn't be so keen to be cartooned, would they? So I don't believe they're all that influential as a cartoonist. It's fun drawing cartoons, but I don't pretend for a moment that I'm influencing the world of politics. I just don't think so. I think that I'm like the little guy in the back of the theatre poking fun at the politics, but not changing politics. That's what I think. Those are my views on the 8 what I would call the most common misconceptions about cartooning. Now, I hope there's something in this video which interested you. If you did find something interesting, it'd be terrific if you click that little like button. Even better if you subscribed. I'm currently up to 7 subscribers on my channel. It'd be great to reach the magic milestone of 8 subscribers, which I know doesn't sound all that fantastic, but it'd be pretty exciting for me. So there is that. So thank you for watching this far. I hope you come back and check out my channel again. I hope you go to my other videos and have a go at learning how to draw cartoons. Thank you for watching.